to the next live stream for the Artist Forge. I'm joined by the wonderful Matt and the charming Bassam and the amazing Becca and the lovely Kat. Welcome everybody to the live stream for the first Thursday of the month. How's everybody doing tonight? I see we have 5 friends really quickly. So before we hear from our amazing moderators, friends, if you're in the comments today, if you're watching, if wherever you are on YouTube or Facebook or anywhere, leave us a comment so we can say hi. We'll put it up on the screen. All right. Mods, how are you guys tonight?
We're doing great.
Excellent. Really looking forward to this.
I have tea.
I've got adult tea.
Yeah, right here, Stagliano.
Oh no!
Is that out loud?
Perfect. That burns. It burns. Oh, it burns.
Hey, help us out, Becca. Who are our friends there?
David Parrish. He says he misses it.
Hey, Coach.
Hey, buddy.
We have 3 Facebook users.
We do. Also, hello, Claudia.
Hey, Claudia.
Hi.
There we go.
That's David.
We missed the coach. Real bad. Mr. Real Bad Coach. Hello, Tyler.
Tyler, good to have you, man.
What's happening, buddy?
Friends showing up today. Say hi from wherever you're at, out on the interwebs, friends. And we will share your comments. Say hi. Let's get started a little bit. So the conversation starter for today is origin stories. The reason we're chatting about this is that over the last couple of weeks, we've been getting a little bit metaphysical, a little bit philosophical, talking about our past, talking about trauma as it relates to art, talking about just a lot of these kind of deep heart things that we've been uncovering, pulling apart, seeing how we relate to those things and how those things relate to the way that we create art. And I really like this idea of origin stories in particular because it feels like when you look back at a lot of the things that you've experienced, you can kind of see how that has led you to become the person, the artist that you are. And rather than carrying those things around like heavy burdens, we really can kind of look at those like the origin story in a superhero movie. So I wanted to just have that as the beginning of a conversation starter. If you're in the audience today, feel free to respond to this question too. But how do you guys feel about growing, finding beauty from the darkness, using those things in your past, not as a crutch or a handicap, but as a real way to grow, and maybe even at some point being grateful that you were able to grow from those things? And obviously we've talked about this before. We don't ever want to look at trauma as if it's a requirement for art, right? But for some of us, it has resulted in beautiful growth and beautiful things and ways to connect with people and help people. So I'm just curious how we relate to this idea in general.
Well, I have to say that I missed a lot of the discussion this week and last, so I have a perfectly good excuse to sound like I have no idea what I'm talking about tonight. So just want to say that up front. All right.
I never believe you, Bassam. You always have brilliant and wise things to say.
You know, I think one of the things that I got out of the discussion the most, and speaking about just my own experience, and who am I to tell anybody how to deal with what they've dealt with in the past, whatever trauma. But for me, it's always been the perspective of the situation after the fact, and then how I deal with it. So rather than the trauma or the emotional event being the thing that I have to focus on, it's more, how do I focus on dealing with it instead? And how do I look at it from a different perspective, disassociate myself from it and say, what can I learn? How can I utilize this to be better? What lessons can I learn? How can I grow more? And so for me, while it's not necessarily clear in the moment, I always keep an eye towards the future, knowing that my past has shown me that I've gotten through 100% of my bad days. So I can look back and say, all right, well, what lesson did I need to learn there? What patterns am I repeating? Is there a way that I can turn this into something that I'm grateful for learning this, grateful for understanding this part of me and getting a better view into who I am? And then with that knowledge, turning that into art, turning that into my style, my voice, the things that I like. And I think with that, as you start to pour out that authentic part of yourself, that it can't help but resonate with other people, as opposed to coming up with something that you're like, well, I was sad, so I have to create something sad. Not necessarily the case. You can say I was sad. I've learned these things about myself. Here is how I'm interpreting it. So I've always tried to turn it a little bit, even though in the moment it might not feel like, oh yeah, I'm going to use this for something great. It winds up being a little bit of hindsight and some reframing, and it's done me wonders in terms of finding my particular voice.
I gotta.
Uh-oh.
I was watching your face there. I was like, ooh, Kat has something to say. I can tell. Also, hi, Erica.
That's a very linear hindsight way of trying to reframe it after you've been through it. I don't know that it's always that easy to structure and turn into a process in the moment. Like I do believe like trauma can be a catalyst for things. And you can certainly find yourself in the middle of a situation and realize like, okay, how am I responsible for this and how can I reframe it? But oftentimes you're just so in the middle of it, like you're probably not even thinking about the art space of it, right? I shared a meme with you guys earlier that was from, looks like Jared Anthony Loggins. You think your pain and your heartbreak is unprecedented in the history of the modern world, but then you read. It was books that taught me the things that tormented me most were the very things that connected me with all the people who had ever been alive. Quoted Baldwin. I don't know if that's Alec or otherwise, but
some Baldwin somewhere.
One of them. There's a bunch. But knowing like that might be your process post, but I think in the middle of it is really like where the value lies in that creation space from it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and I think we're actually in violent agreement on this. Is they like in the moment, there is no thought about how can I necessarily reframe this and how can I create something from this. That's not what I'm saying. It's once you've kind of gone through that and you can just get your breath again and settle and look at it and say, all right, what did I just learn and how can I use that down the line? It doesn't happen, immediately, but upon reflection, I look at the stuff from my childhood and I'm like, okay, for the past 48 years, I haven't even thought about that. But now that I've gone through these other things and have this collective emotional experience, I can see how it all kind of ties together, understand it rather than be, upset by it, understand that it happened and how can I then utilize that? But no, in the moment, you're caught up in the moment. And
okay.
Yeah, I think we're saying, go ahead.
No, I was just saying cool.
All right, let me jump in and disagree with everybody.
Yeah.
I absolutely have had times where big things are happening and the only expression I have at that point is to make something. And I can feel like if I don't do a thing, I'm going to explode from the inside out. And there are a few pieces that I have created specifically from that space where I was feeling so much that I needed to be able to just blah all of it. And sometimes that manifests itself in talking to other people. We can kind of let those things out, or standing in the rain and screaming or whatever else it is. And sometimes journaling, really fantastic for that. But every now and then I will have a time where something is happening that's just so much I'm too full of it and it needs to escape somehow. And in those moments, I definitely have created some pieces of art that I feel like were really great representations of how I felt at that time. And then, of course, like you said, Matt, after I've experienced it, I do have a chance to go back and go, okay, now that I'm past that thing, I've had a chance to process it a little bit. Like, how can I then pull all those experiences together and purposefully use them with that hindsight being 2020, when you have like kind of the full picture of everything, I feel like there's a way that it can be deeper or have more depth, but in the moment there's definitely a visceralness to that expression,
Sure.
right? Because you don't always understand what's going on, so there's a lot of expression and stuff in there. And so I definitely think it can be both, but I don't want to go seeking that by any means. I would rather look back on it and be like, yeah, it makes sense, you know, given the things that I experienced growing up, that I would really connect to fantasy work. And of course, you know, yeah, like I can tie those things in, but every now and then being in it really does allow you to do some pretty visceral stuff, even though I wouldn't necessarily be like, yay, everybody go traumatize yourselves. Sometimes.
Well, and I don't think anybody's saying you can't create while you're in it. It's just how you're choosing to create the perspective around the experience itself. Because being in it and then being able to sort of look back at it are two very different experiences, even though one might take you to the other, right?
Sure.
And, you know, being able to create from that space, like, thank God there's some benefit there. There's been some really incredible work, you know, that's been created from trauma. That's not to say that the trauma was great, right? But it, you know, art is a means for expression.
Agree. I like it. Friends in the audience, what are your thoughts? Have you ever created from trauma? Do you ever look at your past or the difficult things you've gone through and recognize how those things have led you to become the person, the artist that you are today? How do you use art as a way to grow or to cope or to express that fullness of human experience? I'm interested to know. Share your thoughts in the comments. Becca, Bassam, do you guys have any thoughts on this idea of origin stories and how we kind of take those things we've experienced and grow from them artistically?
Well, I have a hard time relating a little bit to what you guys are discussing because I have throughout my life, most of my life, I really didn't consider myself, and I wasn't really creative, or I discovered photography relatively late, after the age of 50. And so it's only lately that I'm starting to see myself as a creative or as an artist. And I don't have any experiences with trauma where I can draw some conclusion and say, well, I was able to deal with the trauma by being creative, or by applying it through, or at least influencing my art, or manifesting itself in creativity. So I can't really relate to that, okay, in that sense. But it does make me reflect on how has trauma manifested itself in my life, right? And the way I would say I would explain it is that trauma allows you to, it creates that space for you to re-question things. It creates that space for you to kind of go backwards and forwards and try to figure out what's going on, and how real is this and what does it mean. So by doing that, you're forced to do that. Therefore, you're automatically in a zone, in outside of your comfort zone, right? And that's how I can see that creativity will come from that. Now, I can't, as I said, relate it to art as such, or photography. And I can't think of examples of what's the equivalent of creativity, or what type of creativity did I draw from any trauma, right? So I'm thinking back to even 3 years ago when I went through my mini or maxi cancer trauma, right? I have a hard time pinpointing, how did that manifest itself in my creativity, because I was still a photographer. I had become a photographer, and I was creating at the time, but I can't make that link. So I'm not sure if anybody else is in that boat where it's not that obvious to them.
Sure. I want to share a couple comments really quickly, and then we'll kind of touch on that as well, because we have some interesting, the antithesis, right? Kat was mentioning the antithesis of that. So I want to get to that. But Nina has said, much of my work has been healing from trauma. I did a show called Rise, which combined mixed media and art with poetry as a story of overcoming trauma, which is pretty amazing. Cicilla also saying, I've used painting as a way of working through depressive episodes. Once I painted 3 paintings over the course of 3 nights. I was deeply depressed, but after those nights, I moved past it. I hate those paintings today. They're ugly to me because all the pain that was embedded in them, creating can be a powerful therapeutic tool. And then Claudia, I always found a way to create something and a way to cope with things I was living, writing, singing, dancing, making art. I always had a very imaginative mind, and that helped me a lot. Now, as an adult, when I look back, I realize I've always been a creative person. I just didn't know it when I was a child or a teenager. And I think that is kind of one of the interesting things that makes me wonder about the way that this may relate to your experience, Bassam, is sometimes I think when we have this idea, to relate it to this idea of origin stories, sometimes the trauma doesn't always manifest itself in the art itself, but just in the desire to do the thing. So, as a kid, I was not making things that were using any of the difficulties I had been through and saying, I'm going to use this and look what I've done. It was, this happened to me. I need to get away from it, or I need to escape from it, or I need to, I need to not be dealing. And so running away to fairyland, a fantasy, that was the perfect place to go. And then I could safely experience those things through an avatar, through, a hobbit or a whoever was going off to fight the dragon. I could safely experience all those things, but it has built in me this almost constant desire to be making something. And so I wonder, Bassam, with your experience, did you feel after that any impetus to just want to have the chance to make as a way to leave behind things? Or, I don't think we always I think I bungled this, but what I mean to say is I don't think we always have to purposefully be using the art as therapy. I think sometimes the desire to create just manifests itself out of that, if that makes any sense at all.
It does, but it's not the desire to create. I don't see that coming out of anything I live. It's more the desire to, in the case over the last 3 years, it's more the desire to be of service to people. It's more the desire to do what I do, why I do the photography. It's not about creating. It's not about doing, related to the art itself, or doing to the related to the creativity itself. It's more about how I deal with people and how I view things. I don't know if that makes sense. It's when you say do the thing, you can say, well, you are doing the thing. You are, you're more of service than you would have ever been had it not been for that, for example. But I don't see it that way. I just see it as a simple.
Bassam, I wonder if you are an artist of relationships.
Maybe.
Yeah, I was wondering if it was about, your ability to connect, and that just sort of giving you the drive to connect more wholly.
Maybe that's what it
people.
is. So, right. And I don't make the link with art and creativity as such. So, because we were talking about origins and trauma versus art, as opposed to trauma versus whatever it is that comes out of it, right?
So the art is a symptom, in a way, of your wanting to be of service.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Becca, how about you? And then as you come up with what you want to say, Erica also has said that trauma I have gone through has caused me to be as creative as a means of avoidance. Hey, yo, what's up, team member? I think we're definitely on the same team there. Becca,
Yeah.
how about you?
God, what is appropriate to share publicly on the internet? That is the question. I know I mentioned when we talked about this the other day on the walk and talk about recreating certain emotions for myself, negative emotions, even related to trauma. And Nicole, you mentioned it's not like people are going out to seek these bad things. Yes, they are. They absolutely are. And that is a large issue, in particular, certain mental health circles, especially people who live with bipolar, you don't want to take your pills because then maybe it gets rid of your mania and then you don't make your art as well and it sucks. And so it's a real thing that some people do experience, is how do I fuck myself up more for the sake of making better art, because they have that reliance on those traumatic or depressive feelings. So that is a real thing. But so, I mean, for me, like, I know that I perform very well under extreme pressure. And I would not be the person that I am right now if I hadn't gone through some very bad shit. And it has had an impact on the way that I function and the way that I motivate myself, like being in these positions where it feels very live or die. And there, I chose live. I chose to be the badass, right? And so they helped me get to the point where I can function well under pressure. I can function well with negative emotions. And if I need to tap into them by watching, maybe something triggering like a TV show or a movie, or listen to like some really sad music, or whatever that is that gets me into that state where I can really deeply connect with something that I have felt in the past, and that can help me then connect with the audience of the work that I do, like I will do that. I prefer to actually experience any more real trauma, but if I can kind of fake it and manipulate myself, like I'm there for it.
But do you feel like using those things, you now have a safer way? I mean, like there's a difference between using tools to help put yourself in an emotional state that you can then walk away from, right? As opposed to the kind of traumatic events that grab and hold on to you for long periods of time and alter the way that you relate to people and life and all of those things. You feel like having that like a healthier way to deal with the repercussions of that now?
I mean, yeah. Again, it's self-manipulation, right? It's finding ways to trick yourself into thinking or feeling a certain way. Yeah, Nina, I feel that. Like there's sometimes, even if it isn't feeling good in the minute, like you just got to do it, right? You got to do it because it's something bigger than yourself and it has some meaning to you. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how healthy it is. I mean, I think I'm all right. I'm mostly a functional human, so I'm not going to stop doing things because, self-care 101 on the internet told me to. I prioritize the art. I prioritize my emotions. I prioritize being introspective and understanding myself and how that relates to other people. So I'm gonna keep at doing what I'm doing.
And I think there's a huge point, right, in this whole conversation about relating trauma and past emotional events to our art, right? It can be just the fact that it put us on this path to creation. It could be that it made us a more empathetic individual. It could be that we're able to connect to people in a different way and be able to have conversations that then wind up showing up in our art, not as an overt thing, but just because of us understanding ourselves and the people that we connect with a little bit better. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a direct correlation between I feel sad, here's a sad piece of art. It could be I feel sad or I've understood this. I can now relate to people in a different way and hear things in what they're telling me, so that when I'm photographing them, I'm a bit more sensitive to what may or may not cause them to have a response. I think there's a lot to be said for just getting that emotional experience and seeing how it shapes you as a human and then as an artist as well, and how much you combine those two, right? So
Yeah, totally. And I mean, like, I'm sure everyone's like met someone at some point in their life who's been like supremely out of touch and just hasn't had a lot of lived experience. And so they can't connect with other people, at least not a broad range of other people. And so, it is kind of an unfortunate reality that when some of us go through bad things or certain experiences or, various stages of life, that's going to allow us to have that sense of empathy and that sense of compassion for that greater range of people. So then we can, and as far as business and art goes, serve them better because we do have that sense of compassion and understanding that someone else might not.
Well, and that sense of connection too, right? Like sometimes, and you could be drawing whether it's trauma or a joyful experience, right? And create what that feels like for you on a visual space so that other people who have experienced that thing can share in that with you, right? Whether you're standing in front of them or 5,000 miles away. And I think that's important to really note is having that art allows for your ability to connect with others because that's a form of expression.
Yeah, there's a saying, I know I've mentioned it a few times, but the more personal something is, the more universal it becomes. And one of the things we all have in common is pain. That's part and parcel to the human experience, as part of being alive, which is why you know, when we're sad, we want to listen to sad love songs, and, you know, we watch movies that make us cry and all of those things. And there's something cathartic in being able to go through those experiences safely. Someone else is going through it and you're just partaking a little bit. It's kind of living vicariously through someone else's experience, which is a big part of why writing and stories are so powerful. And somebody, there's a saying in the writing world, which is write what you know. And people sometimes mistake that and think, well, I've never been to the Arctic. Does that mean I can't write about somebody exploring the Arctic? No, it means write the emotions you know, write the experiences you know, the interpersonal relationships that you know, all of that kind of stuff. And what you were saying, Becca, I latched onto particularly. There's a song called The Arsonist's Lullaby. And there's a particular section of lyrics that I think it's the chorus actually that says, all you have is your fire and the place you need to reach. Don't you ever tame your demons, but always keep them on a leash. And I like this idea of recognizing what's there and recognizing those faults or those weaknesses or those struggles or whatever it is, and not being like, I'm just going to delete them entirely from my life, but writing them, right? Like using them, knowing them, using them when they serve you, but not ever letting them control you in a way. So maybe there's something to that idea of like knowing it's there, being able to touch it, reach it, use it when you want to, being able to put it away when you don't need it.
There was a very controversial conversation towards the end of Game of Thrones, which Sansa and the Hound are speaking, and he mentioned that she'd gone through all these horrible things, and called her little bird, and she replies to him like, you know, if these things hadn't happened to me, I would still be that little bird, and I'm not anymore. And some people were very upset about this conversation because of all the bad stuff that went on in the show. But I mean, I felt like I really connected with that too, because there are those demons and things that happen to everybody. And you would not be who you are in any possible way if they didn't happen. You can't even fully understand who you would be without those things. And I think, you know, learning to see the results, kind of like Matt said in the beginning, as a positive thing, you know, looking back on things in hindsight and being like, hey, this is how I can spin this and reframe this in a way that serves me, can be really incredibly powerful if you're able to do it. So
I think there's something important to bring up about that. Matt, go ahead, because I saw you just have something to say, and then I'll.
Yeah, no, just really quickly. I mean, part of my therapy and getting past a lot of my stuff was the visualization that all of those different parts of me, all the demons, all the different voices that I hear are passengers on a bus. And who am I allowing to drive the bus that day? Right. So if the real me wants to drive that bus, I have to recognize that there's all these passengers, and every now and again, I'm going to get tired and someone else is going to take over. And that, you know, it's up to me to just be able to recognize and live with and, you know, live in harmony with all these pieces, knowing that they're all part of me. Doesn't mean I have to let them drive the bus every single day. Doesn't mean I have to let them dominate my emotions every single day. And that weird little visual did me wonders, because when I find myself in a place, I'm like, oh, this is that injured child that's driving the bus, or this is the scared perfectionist that's driving the bus. I can understand the different parts of me if I can visualize them in that way. And I just think it's, you know, it ties into this demon conversation, leaving them on the leash, but never taming them, because I don't want to get rid of those pieces. I just want to recognize that makes me they're part of the whole.
Integrate,
and I can,
Integration. That's what I was thinking too, Kat.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's probably something that we should say in relation to, so, you know, Becca was talking about that particular conversation. And a lot of people also mention, you know, they'll say, no, I don't want to be strong. I don't want to have these traumas in my past. Like, no, why would I want that? And obviously not. Nobody wants to go through those things. But I think there's a difference between recognizing it was shitty that these things happened. We wish that they would not have happened. It's not good that they happened, right? However, how do we integrate those things? Like you're talking about, Matt, like how do we can bring those things into our current situation and the life that we have now? Because they're never going to be gone. They happened. But what do you do with them? Do you leave them as broken pieces on the floor so that you cut your feet every time you walk across the ground? Or do you grab them and put them back together in some kind of order that serves you? I'm going to make a vase out of my broken parts and use it to put flowers in. That doesn't mean that the bad thing never happened. It just means I now get the ability to grow from the bad thing or to take the bad thing and make it serve me. That's the idea of keeping the demon on a leash, right? Is saying like, it's not ever going to be gone. We don't get to get rid of that stuff. But we do get to choose if it serves us now. And I would rather have it serve me than have it continue to hurt me. Because the one thing, we're never going to be able to stop bad things from happening in the long run. Sometimes bad things are just going to happen. Your loved ones are going to die. You're going to get sick. Your car is going to get smushed. Like there's just things that are outside of your control. What do you do with those things once they're there? You make them beautiful. That's what you do. And as artists, we get a really unique privilege in being able to do that and then give them to other people that becomes a pathway to healing or a pathway to understanding or a pathway to connection for those folks who may not have had the ability to express themselves in a way that served them. So we get to create the avatar for those people, which I think is pretty flippin' cool. Any other thoughts, guys? So we do have some really fun images to look at, but I want to make sure we get some final thoughts on this idea of how we relate to trauma as artists and our past and just deep emotional things that have happened. If you're in the audience today, share your thoughts with us if you're willing. I know it is a vulnerable thing to do. So if you're not comfortable, don't feel pressured. But if you are, let us know. Any kind of final thoughts on this topic, y'all, before we get into some visual literacy?
I'm a little bummed I missed my villain arc.
It could have happened. It could have been me.
Still might happen.
Is there? Maybe it's in your future somewhere, Becca. Maybe you didn't.
Becca,
miss it at
you
all.
can be a villain.
Okay.
It still could happen. It's still a possibility. Okay. So if anybody is sharing anything, we will definitely grab that and put it up on the screen. If you are just joining us today, pop in and say hi. We want to see your comments. We will share them on the big screen just like this, so we know who you are and we can say hi. But what we are going to do now is actually take some pieces of art and break them down visual literacy style. Everybody on the panel today has shared one piece of their own that they consider art. And here's what I want to preface this by saying. We have had the conversation over the last couple of weeks. We talked about the idea of craftsmanship versus art. We've talked about how are they related? Are they the same? Do we do one all the time? Sometimes. What do those words even mean to us? Some of us will have the definition of art that if you made it, it's a piece of art and that's it. And that's good. Others of us comprehend something different in that definition. And I think this is going to give us a really great chance to actually show a piece, talk about why it is art to us. What does that mean to us? And give our friends in the audience a chance to also break down some of these visuals and be able to see how these things are being expressed, how these ideas and feelings are being expressed. And if that works, like, did we connect to it? Was it successful from a visual literacy standpoint in its ability to communicate? So I'm going to share my screen. And I'm doing it. And we are going to start with a beautiful piece that Becca has created that I have actually licensed in the past because I liked it so much. So here we go. All right. So we are starting with this lovely piece right here. If you're in the audience today, this is the way that we do visual literacy exercises. First, we're going to start by looking at the image, just really not trying to critique it. We're just going to look at it and think about how it makes us feel, and then just share how it makes us feel. No judgment, but how do we feel looking at this image? Start putting those in the comments section. We'll pull those comments up. Panelists, how do we feel seeing this?
Anxious. I feel that not knowing good, evil, something good's going to happen, something bad's going to happen. I don't know. There's that anxiety building just looking at it. And I think it's because it's a child, right? So I think it's those connections, danger, that sort of thing that's causing me anxiety.
Loss, Nina says.
I feel cold too.
Despite all of that, I see a bit of hope in there. I see a hope because
Apprehension
of
from Michelle.
apprehension.
Continue that thought, Bassam. We don't want to lose it.
No, I see a bit of hope. You know, the whole thing about the light at the end of the tunnel, where this child is, you know, the movement of the arms is telling me it's almost like, oh yes, they're happy. They're going towards something that they've been looking for. They found what they're looking for, or the child has found what they're looking for. That's why I say hope.
Yeah. I feel like there's a sense of wonder, but also there's a conflicted there, because everything about the way that the image is built tells you mystery, tells you danger, but there's still a sense of wonder in it. Oh, there you go, Becca.
I think it's all the sharp edges, right? All the branches and all the sticks, and that contribute to this feeling of potential pain. I don't know. And it's the darks, it's the sharpness of a lot of those branches that I can almost feel them under my feet. Like every step is painful. And there's this sense of foreboding, you know.
Ooh,
and
foreboding, that's a good one.
Apprehension really, I think, better describes it than anxiety. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. Something's about to happen. I have no idea what it is.
Did the screen go green?
Nope.
Okay, so something's just weird with my computer. So Claudia saying the child is following the light and doesn't realize the danger around it.
I'm kind of like right down the middle of the road. It's either like an X-Files moment or a Homecoming.
I feel like also a sense of temptation. Okay, so we've shared some of the way that this image is making us feel. Now let's see if we can break down why. Matt has already kind of explained a little bit, like we have shape language going on here, right? We have these sharp lines, we have pointy edges, all of these sticks moving at angles. Also, I think there's a lot of deadfall. So there's a lot of dead things around the child. And also the scale is there as well. She's so small. And if you look at how this has been framed, where she's at in the frame related to everything else, she's just dwarfed by her environment. So there really is that sense of being in over your head, of things being too big for you. The open arms make me feel like the kid is not fearful, but in wonder. So some looking at the body language there. The dead trees and the child alone heading towards a light read death and loss to me. What are some other things we can use from a visual literacy standpoint to point to why the image is making us feel this way? What about color, contrast, all of that good stuff?
Outside of this being the illustration of the origin of Becca's villain arc, I think the dark blues are what caused me to feel cold, right?
Yeah.
And the blues and the blacks just make it feel heavy, and I can feel the humidity in the air, but it's not that warm summer humidity. It's that dark,
that early
dank
morning
forest.
dew.
Yeah. And so it keeps giving me not a chill like I'm scared, but it's just an uncomfortable chill. And I think that's purely because of the color cast and, all the dark shadows in it.
Sure.
Well, and almost like,
also-
in
go ahead.
those in the horror movies, right? With like the ghost that haunts the house from the girl who died and passed away and like that's really where all of this is leading me. Is just like she's a little girl ghost.
I think there's also a lot of power in the fact that we don't see her face. So this isn't one specific child. This is any child. This is any little girl. This is, there's a lot of room for interpretation there. This is me. This is my, goddaughter. This is, this could be any little girl. Okay. So we've done a little bit of breaking down. Let's hear from Becca. So break this one down for us, Becca. Talk to us about like what went into this shot. What were some of your intentions with how you put the image together?
I mean, it is ambiguous, and it doesn't specifically one way or the other, and that's kind of the wonder of anything Fae, right? So we have our, Lantern Man or Will-o'-the-Wisp, nod to Sissela out there who knows all the weird Scandinavian folklore. And it's alluring. It could be good, it could be bad. And that's kind of waiting to be seen. And so this photo, the original photo is a photo of my daughter in our yard, and she was excitedly watching like the butterflies or the birds or something in the yard. And so like there is that sense of wonder in her posture. And so when I took this photo of her, I was just like, oh my God, I know what I need to do with this. Because I was just out there, we're just hanging out. And I mean, she's absolutely the kind of child who would be excited to follow a Fae light floating through the woods. And there is that kind of exciting feeling, of being a kid where things don't scare you really in the way that they would an adult. Like, I feel like if an adult saw this, they would run the other way because we've seen all the horror movies and know what happens, right? But a kid, it's exciting. It's exciting. And maybe you aren't quite so vulnerable in the same way that an adult is. So yeah, it isn't specifically leading to loss or to death or to excitement. It is a bit mysterious there, but it is ambiguous, and it was meant to be.
Right. And the great thing about that purposeful ambiguity is that it allows us to bring so much of our own experience and our own biases and everything else to the image. So the interpretation becomes uniquely our own, even though we have a lot of the same context clues. And we may end up in a very similar ground. Like, we all kind of had some discomfort in one way or another, whether that was like apprehension or impending doom or danger or whatever it is. We all kind of felt something in that. It's not yay, let's run off and play and we love each other vibes. It's something still kind of otherworldly, a little maybe dangerous. But that ambiguity of getting to bring your own interpretation is really fantastic. Okay, we got to move on to the next image. Thank you, Becca. It is beautiful. You know how much I love it. So now we're going on to an image by Kat. We're going to start by just taking a really good look at the image. And then we'll share how we feel. So if you're hanging out in the audience today, now it's time to think and share, what do you feel about this image? What does it make you feel? Don't try to critique it yet, but what does it make you feel?
Inadequate as a photographer.
I kind of feel like I'm at the theater.
There's a name for the feeling, and I can't think of what it is, but it's when you see a beautiful thing and you feel small in the face of it. There's a name for that. I don't even know if it's actually an English word, but that's how I feel. It's one of those, I guess it's in a way what you would feel looking at, a god or a goddess. Like, ooh, that's too much for me. So Erica's saying goddess. First reaction, oh, pretty and shiny. Elegance and awe.
I'm feeling less goddess, more fairy queen. There's a whimsiness to it that isn't quite like regal and holy, if that makes sense.
It's not quite otherworldly, right?
It's a little otherworldly, but
But
not
it's
like
tied
not,
to this, yeah. Not
Yeah.
you, not where you can't interpret it. It's still,
it's organic, kind of.
yeah.
You know, I said inadequate as a photographer earlier, but inadequacy and inferiority actually fits this because I don't
Yeah.
feel like I'm worthy to be in this woman, this goddess's presence. I feel extraordinarily pedestrian, right? Like she's kind of unlocked the secrets to the universe and she's on a completely different plane than anything that I'll ever get to as a mere mortal. It just gives me that feeling of inferiority of, oh, there's a natural order to the universe and I'm down here and this lady's like way up here.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, humility.
Or that word.
I mean, that is what I was thinking earlier, because it's not when you feel humble in the face of that thing, it's not as if you are degraded, right? It just means you recognize I am small and it's okay. That's where I'm supposed to be. Bassam, any particular feelings you can share?
I don't know why yeah, I'm in awe and I feel humility, but I keep getting these visions of the Moulin Rouge in France. I don't know why, in Paris, you know, that type of production.
More theater, yes.
Theater, yeah. And specifically for some reason, the Moulin Rouge, even though she's not really dressed or undressed in any way, the way those productions are, but for some reason I
Well, because there's
seeing
that sense of opulence, right? Like there
Yeah.
was always a kind of a big affair about everything, and so that
Yeah.
makes sense. That's
Yeah, and I think like her face, her features, you know how you I don't know if you've been to the Moulin Rouge or any those kind of productions, they all look exactly the same. I mean, their faces look exactly the same, and it's that look.
So now that we've kind of established how this is making us feel, what do you think are these visual signifiers that are causing these particular feelings to happen?
What's the glamour, the grandeur, the tones?
Grandeur.
Yeah.
Beautiful
these-
actress overwhelmed with the beauty around her. Body language makes me feel that she's uncomfortable.
That's kind of what gives me fae too, instead of goddess, because it doesn't have a powerful sense of body language to it. And the color, while it's very, very warm, it's still kind of muted. It doesn't quite have that glint of like real gold. It feels almost like a mushroomy to me, or like crunchy leaves. And you've got these like nice crinkles in the fabric. You know, it feels very tactile and again, kind of organic. Like my first impression would be like, I have pushed a bush aside and here is this beautiful fairy in her mushroom hat surrounded by her flowers, and that's the read I got off it, just especially in the color, because it isn't over the top, it isn't oversaturated, it is very muted and leafy feeling. That's my articulate description.
In a way it does. I mean, I can see that read. And the flowers in the background and in some of the overlay stuff that's being used are so large. So you kind of feel in a way that maybe you have entered Wonderland and you've pushed through the flowers, and maybe she got there and got crowned queen of the flowers, but she didn't really decide to do it. They were just like, you are the queen. And she's like, oh, really? Yeah.
And also that, I mean, like,
still
almost,
being beautiful, but
it's not quite shock on the face, but I mean, there's this like upward look of like cotton motion, right? You know, it's not dead eye contact. It's not
right.
severe. It's like, oh.
Yeah, I think all the forgive me, Kat. I say that right now. But I feel like there's a velvet texture to this, right? I would want to see this painted on velvet. There's so much matte texture to it that it feels extraordinarily warm. It feels very textured, and I don't know if that's the overlays. I don't know if it's the tones that make me feel like it's clearly on fabric, right? But that's just the way that it feels to me. All these tones, all the muted colors, right? And I think you said it best when you said opulence. All those things tied together, the exaggeration of the flowers, right, just makes it feel inviting, and it's like it's wrapping itself around me. I don't know. I'm also wearing a suede coat, so I'm like, I don't know.
Ooh.
I like feelings. Yeah, I'm like the wine hitting.
I like this. Sisla saying kind of 30s Thumbelina, so we have like a golden age thing happening, right? All right, so now that we've done a little bit of breaking down, looking at things like the texture and the dress and the color toning, the choice of, styling and this sense of opulence. And so, Kat, let us know a little bit about this image and why this is a piece of art for you.
So this is one of those pieces that came from that space of like, the world is overwhelming. I just need to create. Like, I need to create something just from my heart instead of for all the other things. And when that occurs for me, there's rarely a trajectory. It's very experimental. We just sort of put things together and see what happens. And this is what happened. And that's why it's a piece of art for me, because it wasn't fully made from like a recipe space or a story I wanted to tell. It was purely from a need to create in that moment.
Love that.
It's beautiful.
Yes, it's so
Thanks,
pretty.
guys.
It's so pretty. Okay, we're going on to the next one. This is, hang on. Okay, so Bassam had mentioned, so we have two images here. We have this beautiful image that Bassam wanted to share, and then we have a strange kind of a backup that is a counterpiece to, which Bassam, you said you don't like this one as much, which I found really interesting because I like this one very much. So this was the image that you chose. So would you like to stick with this shot and maintain the other just as a potential point of reference if you have more that you want to explain?
I guess it helps if I unmute myself.
Be a little bit
Let's
helpful.
go with this image, and
Okay.
then I'll tell you why the other one's there.
All right.
Right.
So let's have a look at this
Not
one.
necessarily related, but it's part of the story.
Sure. All right. So remember, have a look at the image. Friends in the audience, start commenting. What does this image make you feel? Don't try to critique it too much yet. Just go on pure gut instinct.
Feel sad.
Me too.
I feel a lot of love, as a matter of fact. There's just a loving quality about it.
I feel it feels like acceptance. That's what I feel like when I see this image. Peace. Another one for peace. Relief. Gentleness.
I could see acceptance. Sure. Loss.
Becca, what about you?
I don't know what word to use.
Nobody can interpret my art. What's wrong with you?
You're a genius, Bassam.
But they're not feelings.
I feel calm and content. And then I see the expression, but I'm trying to just go on the overall feeling and contentment. There's a sense of contentment or calm that overwhelms me.
Grief,
So,
maybe.
So what are some of the things we think visually are making us feel this way? Tyler, what is it that makes you think that this is relief? Nina, where's peace coming from? What do we think is the visual cue that's giving us these feelings?
There's an interesting juxtaposition that's happening. The gown is very bridal. Her hair is very, very meticulously finished, and yet she's laying in, the leaves, and there's is that a coat that she's laying with?
It looks like a scarf or like a piece of fabric, maybe.
Yeah.
So this is where my questions on story come from, because I feel like that could be many different things.
Mm-hmm.
And that would change kind of the feeling. Like there almost is a sense of acceptance might be a good one, or even maybe kind of longing. Like the wedding didn't work out and she's holding their sheets, his cloak or something, and she's just kind of accepted that she's going to ruin her wedding dress and ruin her hair and just lay here. Because she doesn't feel dead, but she's doing something.
No, you know what it reminds me of? This is a story, of course, I'm bringing to it all on my own. But if I was going to write a short story about this, it would be about a woman who lost her spouse. And she's in the same way that you may go visit a headstone or a place that the two of you loved. That's the way that this makes me feel. Something about the leaves. I mean, she's laying in dead things, right? Leaves in autumn, that's the time of year when things are slowing down and starting to die and passing away and getting ready to go. And she's there, but she's beautifully serene, and her face is relaxed and her hands are so elegant, and she's touching her center. And it just has this feeling of, I'm here now and I'm okay with that for a little while. Makes me feel she needed time alone to rest after the wedding, saying her face is really relaxed. Tyler saying the expression and hand placement, maybe this happened after her wedding ceremony that she's been stressed and overwhelmed with. So now she has the chance to be like, woo, it's done. And also visually, I think the fact that she's not quite horizontal and she's tilted a little bit is she isn't quite on an even horizon. And I don't know how I want that to read, but there is this sense of movement. I mean, the sense of movement with the dress up to her head, and then that cross sense as well.
What's in the top right-hand corner? Is that
it looks like
grass?
a mossy, maybe
That is grass. Yeah, it's a little dark on your computer screen, but it's actually green grass.
Oh, okay.
The original is a bit more. There's a lot more detail in it. Yeah.
Also, the aerial view instead of being down on her level is interesting. This could have easily been taken from the ground level and brought us down to experience that with her, but instead we're watching from above.
Yeah,
we're hanging in the trees.
Not creepy.
Or we've approached,
and are looking down. Yeah.
In my head story, in my head canon, we get to be the husband.
It's a modern Sleeping Beauty.
So Bassam,
well,
give us this story.
Yeah, well, I'm going to disappoint you all by saying there really is no story behind this specific image, right? The reason I'm attracted to it, the reason I like it, is more about me as a photographer and what happened that day than about the image itself. This image was created out of frustration and disappointment because I feel good about it because to me it salvaged a day where I felt incredible pressure to be creative and produce, and yet I felt like I couldn't do anything right. Okay, I was collaborating with a friend model of mine who was extremely creative. It was my first shoot after I didn't do anything for 9 months during my cancer treatment, and she wanted to shoot and replicate a painterly Renoir type image, right? Photo. So we spent about 4 hours working on images to try to create the other image that you showed, if you want to go to that one.
Yeah.
Right. And of all the things we produced and all the things we did, I mean, this is what I came up with. I just couldn't do it. I didn't feel right. And that's the only image I can actually produce. And I didn't know what I was doing to get the painterly look, or not the painterly look, but the painting like look. And just gave up. And I said, this is not working. Let's do something completely different. And then we just went out, left the house, left the studio. This was just outside my house. And then we went into the bushes and in the forest and found a little area. And we created that other one. And I'm proud of it. I'm happy with it. I love it. And every time I look at this picture, I kind of feel like I failed. Now, how you feel about it may be different, but it just tells you why I like the other picture, right? I felt victory out of defeat, I guess, right? That's
For
it.
sure.
Yeah.
Which is so interesting because I really like this image.
Well, it's maybe on another day. I'd love to hear why, because that was the intent, was a Renoir type or a painting from that era, anyways.
Sure.
I didn't know what I'm doing when it comes to retouching, and that's what I came up with. So I don't want to take too much time tonight, but I would love to hear that maybe another time, or maybe now. It's up to you. Why do you like it?
I like it because I feel like there's this is a lady in her garden having a pensive moment. It's very much the kind of thing that would have been painted. I mean, it's yes. Absolutely the fodder for this time period that would have been painted. And even the Rembrandt lighting, the Rembrandt short lighting is just super indicative of that kind of thing. And her hands are beautiful here. Also, it's a very painterly way to depict hands. So I think the only thing that we're missing, if we were to go, make this painting, probably there would be more things on the table, just kind of more still life-esque types of things to fill in and make that a little more full. But
candlesticks and this and that.
Sure. Just, some bread and a jar and, just other things on there. But I mean, it very much feels like something that we would have seen from that time. I think the only, if I were going to be nitpicky, I'd love to see the light raised a little bit and caught in her hair so that she glowed, like there would be some things that you could potentially do to up that some, but I think it's great. I really like it. And some friends in the comments saying that they're with us. They like this as well. She looks like she's reminiscing about life, voyeuristic. We're kind of looking in on a private moment.
You know what I think is sorry. Is interesting about these two images together. This, like, she appears to me much older than the woman in the previous image. Like, this would be the present day version of her, like, thinking back about her lost love. Right. And then that first image is like in the moment.
Right.
Blah, blah, blah.
I could see that. Sarah, hello, lovely lady. Good evening. I'm late, but I just thought I would say hi. Nice image. Looks like a British lady who just lost her husband.
Maybe she lost him the night of her wedding.
That may, just I don't know what it is. They really do go together.
Yeah.
I just want to say I like it too, Bassam. I actually find the light very interesting. It isn't particularly painterly on her face. It's almost kind of film noir, but I thought the light immediately was very fascinating. But as far as like your guys' goal of creating like a Renoir style image, I mean, this one by far, it has that impressionistic feel, particularly with the soft focus. I think this one is more interesting.
Yeah.
I think it raises more questions. So I like it. I think you did fine.
Thank you. But by the way, the lighting is very simple. This is totally natural light at sunset, so that the sun was relatively low on obviously on the left-hand side. There was nothing else. I didn't have any other lights. So
Yeah, it didn't need anything.
Yeah, I imagine there's probably leaves or something that I'm pointing at my screen like you guys can see my mouse. The leaves, there's probably like leaves or something creating that shadow kind of across the face.
Up here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which
because she's under a tree actually.
Yeah.
The only thing I
Alright.
would do different is I probably have, like Nicole said, some additional, fine detail on the table and also maybe in the midground, maybe like a fence or something far in the background, just to create again that sense of environment that's really cohesive.
Yeah.
But I think it is just fine.
Me
All
too.
right.
I'm glad we
Thank
got
you.
to see these next to each other and I can see why this would have felt like a success, because it meets a lot of those photographic criteria that we tend to want to look for, that really beautiful soft light that just transfers in a lovely way, and her skin looks like velvet, and there's kind of all of these things that we really love about light in a photograph that could make it feel like, oh, it's way better. But I definitely love both of them, and I think they're both really strong for their own reasons.
All right, y'all. Thank you.
Yes.
For taking the time.
Of course. Okay, where are we at here? Just moving through. Oh,
Awesome.
okay. So before we get to Matt's, we'll have a look at this one. This is mine. So friends in the audience today, we're just going to start by saying how this image makes us feel. How does it make you feel? Don't try to critique it yet. Just gut instinct. What do you feel when you see this image?
Scolded.
Oh.
Creeped AF.
Like I have a giant sword and I'm about to go on a big adventure.
Trauma.
Ooh.
It has a very video game opening scene kind of feel to it, where this is where your adventure's about to begin. And it gives me that sense of, again, foreboding, unknowing, something mysterious lies ahead. So yeah, that's the green tones and whatnot just make me feel all that.
Mm-hmm.
Another vote for that foreboding recommendation. That's a good word for this.
Mm-hmm.
Unsure. Erica, why unsure?
There's a sense of desperation.
So what are we feeling, friends in the audience? We've got a few responses. How does it make you feel? That's an interesting one. He's giving direction, but I don't want to go that way. I don't blame you. This is really, really interesting phrasing, Sarah. Michelle saying unsure.
Yeah, there's a confusion because without getting too much into interpretation, he's pointing, but he's blind. How does he know it's that way? Right. So there's this feeling of like untrustworthiness. And again, like, I guess it's distrust in what I'm seeing. Right. Yeah.
Okay, I don't want to take too
Faith.
much longer on this one because I want to get to Matt's. Go ahead, Kat.
She's saying faith.
Ah,
Mm.
that's a really, really good one. I feel like shit's about to go down. Go to the mountains beyond the field of despair. Yes, distrust. Okay, so we've got a lot of feelings about this one. Why is it making us feel this way? What are some of the visual cues that we can use to say, I feel this way, here's why?
The color toning, the dramatic clouds. He's blind. He's fairly malnourished, right? Like he's bare. Like this man is giving us direction and he's not wearing any clothes and he can't see anything.
I find it very
Video Game
interesting.
101. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Becca.
I mean, you come upon a random blind, half-naked man in a giant empty field with nothing else around. Clearly, he is important to the quest. It is necessary.
I'm on Becca's team.
Yeah, right. That with all these dark clouds, that the only light is coming from heaven. So he's in this shaft of light, like he's supposed to be brought out, like he's an important figure. You have to wander upon this person if you're going to proceed any further. And it's like even the heavens are showing you the way to this person, good or bad, I don't know. But that shaft of light that's coming directly down on him amidst all this other darkness, I think is really interesting.
Well, there's another shaft of light behind him. It's almost like the light is in the wrong place, or there's a shaft of light just on him versus there's one behind him, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's caught the feather of it.
The color, she said, the light on his head, the empty field, the dark background. He's giving direction, and of course, he cannot see. Does anybody happen to notice that you can't read the sign?
I was about to ask actually what they say.
They don't. You can't tell. You can't tell what they say. His body language, the hand pointing the way but being blind, feels like something is wrong. No information on the road signs. The color grading the clouds all make me feel like the road that you should not take. Do we also notice that there is no road? And there isn't one. So
very Stephen King.
I'd really like to know. Me too. I don't know what's on them either.
It's like on the top one we have a sorority.
So I have a composition.
Go ahead, Becca.
I'm failing at this unmuting thing. I'm curious in that he's pointing out of frame, which is an interesting choice, versus straight down the middle. Like you have to actually diverge from the path here, and instead of continuing on your way, I thought that was a curious.
Yes,
decision.
Nina. Very Gunslinger series.
Ooh, yeah.
And I'm just thinking straight memes. Behold the field in which I grow my fucks, and you will see that it is bare.
Please make a meme of it.
Can you please make a meme out of this?
Please.
Somebody.
Oh, God. All right. So I don't want to spend too long because we're pushing a little bit over. I want to make sure we get to Matt's image. We saved it for last because there's a little bit of nudity, so we're going to be careful. However, so this piece for me, I think you guys picked up on a lot of the stuff that had to do with why this is one of the few images I feel like I've made that is art. And there's absolutely an ambiguity there because there's a lot of the signs that we've been taught through culture and storytelling that we should look for. There's the age. He's got a long white beard, right? All the wizards and the mentors, and you're always looking for like the wise old guy who's going to tell you about what you're supposed to do with your life, right? Where you're supposed to go and what you're supposed to do. But he's blind. So do you trust him based on all the things that you've been led to believe about stories and life and all of that stuff? Or do you have a right to question where he's pointing you to go? Because your logic would say there's no path. It's the middle of a storm. You are obviously malnourished. Your signs don't even say a thing. So why really should we believe anything that this guy is telling us? But we're in the middle of a field and he's here. So who else do we have to trust to tell us where to go? Do you have to take that on faith? Do you? Do you have to take it on faith sometimes that somebody maybe knows more than you, even if the signs are telling you that they don't? I don't know. So for me, this image was really a question. And the image is called The Guide. And that's why, like, somebody, I don't remember where this was posted, but somebody's like, it's interesting that it's an old white man. He's telling us what to do. But I think that for all of history, the younger generation always has had that question of their elders, right? Because they have life experience and they have been there and done that. And they're trying to tell you, look, we've been here and here's things. And you're like, you don't know. And then you start to get a little bit older and you're like, oh, maybe they did know. And then you question them all over again. So blind faith that's exactly it. I mean, is it his blind faith? Is it ours? What do we trust? How do we know how to make the right decision and which way to go? So that was really, this image is my meditation on that idea.
I'm loving the fact that old bearded blind guys are legendary. I'm just saying, it's just a thing.
They are, right?
And by the way, whatever it is, it's a stunning image. I absolutely love it, Nicole.
Thanks, friend.
Yeah.
That's gorgeous.
All right, let's move along. One more image to look at. I'm sorry that we're going over time a little bit. We gave ourselves 5 today. I want to make sure that we get to
PG-13?
Yep.
Okay. Oh, geez, come on. They're not going to kick you out because of this.
Hey, just being safe, okay? I don't want them to cut us out. All right.
I'm like questioning the rating on my own images now if this is PG-13.
It's not. Facebook is really prudish. So I don't want them to throw us off of the Book of Faces while we're in the middle of the stream. Yeah, prude. All right, so we're going to look at this image. We're going to talk about how it makes us feel. And then we'll start breaking it down.
Liberated.
Yeah, free, right?
Totally free. Love it.
And luxuriating in the freedom. It's not even just I'm free, but it's like I am free. Like there's
that's like self-care 401.
Yeah. Bravery and strength, freedom. Sensual, absolutely. Redemption. Ooh.
Carelessness.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why later.
She lost her shirt.
Freedom, though. Free with your tatas out is a whole new kind of freedom.
Anything else, friends in the audience today? How does this one make us feel? What's the feeling that we have? There's something else. There's some other word that I want for this, and it's not coming to me yet. I don't want to say, it's not celebration or celebratory. It's something. I'll get into it when we start breaking it down and maybe saying the reasons I feel that way. Maybe saying that will help me come up with a word. Like the sky is your limit. Sissela, you don't go outside naked in Iceland. Letting go. Yeah.
Release. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we feel this sense of freedom or redemption. We feel bravery and strength. We feel release, the letting go of carelessness or burden. we've got a lot of these feelings. So when we look at this image, what do we think it is about the image that's making us feel that way, using some of our visual literacy? Oh, here, reckless abandon. I want to be this person for sure. Yeah, like I see her and I want to be her right now. It's the edge of the wilderness that is the sea, feeling the wildness within. Love that.
So I feel like she's just come out of a shitty relationship. And I feel like the nudity there has given me that a little bit. Like, cast off your shirt, cast off the oppressive, shitty boyfriend. Yeah.
There's a kind of an Aphrodite coming out of the water happening, isn't there? Like a rebirth. Like she just won
like
a
the
battle.
Renaissance.
Mm-hmm.
I keep thinking about, we're talking about what's behind her, what she's left, where she's coming from, and how she's feeling. And yet I look at what she's getting into, and there's a bit of danger there. And there is some recklessness. The reason I said recklessness is because there's these hard rocks, right? And there's this really rough waters ahead of her. And yet she is celebrating, and she is reckless, and she is, it's almost like I couldn't care less what I'm going into. I'm so happy I left where I was.
Yeah.
Some effort attitude for sure.
Right. All right.
There's something of celebration there in the storm. Or is this the end of the storm? I mean, that's kind of one of the cool parts about when you capture just a moment in nature like this, because we have the clouds and we have the sun kind of breaking through this space in the clouds. Is this the beginning of the storm? Is she the beginning of the storm? Or is this the end of the storm? Are we seeing what happens when you come through the other side?
You know what? This is the hindsight of the trauma.
The
reframing, if you will.
I have to say it. I'm sorry. I can't not say it. I can't. There's phallic imagery in here as well, which definitely makes it feel like there's a relation to masculinity and the storm that is around that, and being caught between a rock and a hard place.
Sorry, Nicole, but you missed it. I said it earlier, but somebody spoke over me. I said there's a lot of phallic symbols in there.
Oh no. Okay. So yeah, we're on the same page, Bassam. I was just gonna try not to, and I had to say it.
Yeah.
We do not conquer the storms, we only survive them. This is the story in my head. The sky is open, so I feel like she passed the storm safely. And there's also something too about the fact that we are at a low angle and looking up. Her arms are upraised to the sky, right up between these rocks toward where the heavens are opening. So there is that sense of, in a way, the heavens opening up to smile down and be like, you have made it, like, well done. Sisla saying, I mean, if we go in that direction, the light coming from the sky is triangular. The rocks are pointing up. They just happen to be phallic. It's fine. And also the color toning, right? We have these really beautiful, soft, peachy tones and this gorgeous transition of light that is embracing. There's no hardness in the light at all and in the color. And we have a nice rhythm as well. The spacing between her and the rocks, there's a really nice rhythm in that. So Matt, we've been reading a lot into this image. Let us know a little bit about it. Why is this a piece of art for you?
A lot of things that people said, I guess as I reflect on when I was creating it, really reflect that moment in time. And what, Kat, you were saying was hindsight was absolutely where I was at. And it was a mix of hindsight and being in a moment. So for me, it was a really strange period of time. This was in Iceland. I had 2 minutes, 120 seconds to make this image because it was so cold. I had been speaking with the model the night prior about Roman statues and some of that form work. So we had been working in nudes for part of the day, and we had been talking about what, I had been studying with some of those Roman statues, and I'd love to be able to create something like that. We knew we were going to the beach the next day. It was shitty weather. It was hailing and snowing and raining and windy and gross. And as we were walking across the beach, she and I, to make whatever image I could make, all my plans had gone out the window. The two ravens landed in front of us, and she remarked that there were Odin's ravens, and that seeing two in front of us is very, very good luck. And I was like, all right, I'm going to trust you. I'm wearing 97 layers and it sucks out. And as I started to move away from her and told her what we were going to do, the skies parted. This is all natural light. They did become that pink. The skies opened for a few minutes. I was able to capture this image, and then they closed it and it became crappy again. If you notice, there are some details that you really can't see on the screen. Right in front of her is a very, very small pegmatite skull. And so the footsteps were deliberate to lead to this woman who's embracing life. She's got this rebirth. She's controlling nature with the connection between the waves and her piece of fabric. But no matter what you do, it always ends in death, right? And then there was this connection to the life-death. I wasn't thinking phallus or anything sexual. This was really about freedom and rebirth and emerging out of a storm and then controlling it, controlling your fate. So for me, it just embodied a lot of what I was going through, where I was headed, and trying to capture that. To our conversation earlier, I didn't know why I was creating this. This came purely from flow and just being in the moment. And now, again, looking back at it and what it all meant to me at the time was just like, I just hope I get a good shot. I didn't realize so many parts of me were coming out in one image, that this was the one I chose. So that's the reason.
And man, what a trooper she was.
Yeah, she was phenomenal. Phenomenal. So we did a series in that piece of fabric. Like I said, we had about 2 minutes before the exposure got to be too much. And I was about 100 yards away getting that image. So it was dicey. Yeah.
It's very interesting to me that the feminine leaning persons viewing this all took something very different than the more masculine leaning ones.
Nicole, you're muted, love.
Thank you. It's interesting to me, and I think perfect to end on that note. Like you said, Matt, at the time, you weren't really necessarily connecting like, man, I'm going through a lot. How can I use that right now in this moment to make something? What we experience is naturally going to flow out of us. It can't help it. That's just the nature of feeling and communicating. And when we stop it from happening, when we dam up that flow, that's when we become stagnant inside. Stagnant water breeds disease. So we have to remain open and letting those things go. And it's going to happen so often without our will. I mean, we're going to take what we experience and we're just going to express that in the things that we do. Which is why if somebody has a terrible day and you see them at work and then they're just crabby, they're just releasing all the stuff, right? And we get to do that with our art. And it's interesting, Bassam, as you were saying, nobody can read my art. There's something there about the death of the author, which we've had this conversation a few times, but where our visual literacy, where our intention, where all of those things end is in that relationship with the viewer and their experiences. And it's really cool how, Becca said that the feminine leaning folks were bringing some things to the last image, Matt, but because we have these shared experiences, right? And so we've got this additional little jewel in the kaleidoscope that when it turns, we get to see light through that thing that maybe other people can't. So we have this cool thing happening where when we're creating, we're not always cognizant of the decisions that we make. It's not always as if, for me, the guide was incredibly intentional. That image was in my head for a long ass time. every piece of it was there on purpose. When I'm shooting, that's not necessarily always the case. Sometimes you're feeling your way through it. Like you said, Kat, you just needed to create that time. And so it was, you're moving and you're doing, and that expression is happening without a whole crap ton of forethought. But you're often able to look back and go, wow, I really needed that. When I look at that now, I can see, where that was coming from, or what I was feeling, or like you were describing, Matt, where I was at in my life at that moment. It's so expressive of that, even though it wasn't always intentional. So such a cool tightrope to walk between when we get really intentional with things and we plan things versus when we're feeling them, and when all of the skills and all of the practices and everything else that we've built up within ourselves just comes out in the work that we're creating. And one is never necessarily better than the other. Those are just two ways that we can approach the making of things. And of course, all of it then flowing from who we are and what we've been through and how we feel and what our day was like and what's moving us at the time and all of that stuff. So it's a really, really cool thing just to think about and be amazed by. And it's no wonder that the Greeks thought that the muses were inspiring you, because sometimes it doesn't even feel like you're there for it. It's just happening through you, which is a super cool, what a gift we have to be able to do that. Pretty cool. All right, y'all. So any final thoughts? We went over time. Let's get some final thoughts before we close things down. Friends in the audience, if you have any final thoughts today, share them. We will grab them and stick them on the screen and reply to them. What do we think? What do we think, y'all?
I'm going back to Matt's analogy with the bus and all the passengers on the bus. I really like it, Matt, and I think having images in our mind, having these visualizing things that allow us to make some sense of what we're going through is a powerful thing, and the fact that you did that. But I actually like that specific one, which I think I can adopt. I'm going to steal it from you. Yeah.
I stole it from my therapist. Steal away.
Except you paid him or her.
Send you an invoice. I think, this always, when we meet together like this every couple of weeks, it really does solidify everything that we've talked about the past couple of weeks. And it always brings things home for me. I love the visual literacy exercise because we get to tie it to so many of the other conversations that we've had, right? And I feel like just being part of this has allowed me to kind of look at images differently and not look at it as just being a photograph or an illustration. There's all these different meanings and all these different things. And then I get to look at it and say, all right, well, how can I take those feelings and those clues and the ways that it make me feel and look at my own imagery that way? And how can I incorporate that stuff in? How can I think about my feelings? How can I think about my traumas or whatever? I love how every couple of weeks it's forcing me to combine and condense all this stuff into what I do as an artist. And I think the past couple of weeks, as it's gotten a little bit more metaphysical, has been really, really interesting to me. But I love how we do this sine wave between the metaphysical and the very technical and the very concrete. And it just, I love having these conversations. Thank you.
Kat, Becca, anything you guys want to share before we close down for today?
Becca's making faces. No, I agree with Matt. Like I do appreciate like going down the rabbit hole and the philosophical conversations, and then, making those connections to the tangible pieces. I think allows you to create more intentionally and a little faster. So you can sort of, stack those habits, right? Which is always a really nice way to sort of flex. It's helpful for sure.
Agreed. What were your weird faces for, Becca? She's like, don't make me talk.
I just have a weird face. Just accept it.
These are lies. Nothing?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I super enjoyed today. I'm so glad that everybody got to join us. We got to get together yet again for another live on Thursday, the Artist Forge on origin stories. And I love this idea that we get this chance to take visual literacy and start relating it to our experiences and our preferences and our life story and all of these things, and how those experiences then manifest themselves in the work that we create. And it's really encouraging to me, because it is just that reminder that I don't need to go be the best artist there is. I just need to be the most authentic version of myself and be as truthful as I can in the art that I make and the stories that I want to tell. And those are the things that are going to resonate with the people who are meant to see them. And that is the gift that each of us have. Wynn said that there's a stage for each of us to perform on, right? And we have the gift of being able to do that. So the thing that you are meant to say, nobody can say it but you, which is an amazing thing to think about. We all have the chance to go speak with the voice that only we have. So however you do that, if you're a photographer or a painter or a writer or an artist of relationship, there's a way that you're meant to share those and relate those to the world and to other people. And sometimes that's going to be interpersonal, and sometimes that's going to be through a print on a wall or whatever it is. Go do the thing. Feel empowered to go do it. And don't be scared, because those parts of you that you're afraid other people will see are the parts they probably need to see the most, because you're going to give yourself the freedom to be more you, and you're going to give them the freedom to share the things that they need to share as well. So go make art, people. And thank you to everybody who is with us today, to Nina and Sarah and Claudia and Sisela and David and Michelle and Tyler. I'm trying to go through, and Erica, all of our awesome friends who are here with us today. So grateful to have you guys. Thanks for commenting, for engaging with us in the comments. We love hearing what you guys have to say. Hopefully you will join us tomorrow morning. We are going to talk about email marketing. So there's a big jump from all the feel good stuff that we just did. We're going to talk about email marketing. So I hope you will come and join us for that. It's going to be super technical and helpful, and hopefully very valuable. So thank you to everybody, all of the Artist Forge mentors, panelists, wonderful artists extraordinaire, for showing up, for sharing your work, for being willing to break them down and have other people break them down and share your insights and your thoughts as always. Have a fantastic night, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Thanks for being here. Bye.
Bye, everyone.